the old entrance. Yeah, to go to Old Town, it would be on the left.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no worries.
No, we won't be here for meeting. You know?
Yeah, they usually don't come till 6.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
You turn up just a little bit. Answer that.
Who's that?
Sarah Catan's right. She's working from home. She was kiddos sick and now she's feeling a little woozy and
Michael threatened me if I stepped foot in the building.
most well, a lot of us are about to leave for spring break trips and stuff. Would rather not be dealing with a bug. I mean, we're gonna get stuff. Like our kids are gonna lick the floors at the airport. It's just how it is. But anything I can avoid would be great.
The germs just start.
We are live and recording whenever you're ready.
Well, let's jump into the workshop then. So, yeah. Go ahead, Sarah. You want to provide a intro for Catherine?
Sure, yeah. So thank you all for joining us. Sarah Catanzaright, Assistant Town Manager for the town of Fraser. We've been having some conversations with the board for a while now about exploring home rule. I mean, we talked about it in the retreat with the board over the summer, but wanted to do kind of a formal recap. So a lot of this you will have heard before. We did borrow a lot of slides from Michael Penny, who presented at the board retreat over the summer. But wanted to make sure we were having this discussion in a public forum as well, and just kind of fully evaluating before we make a decision or the board makes a decision whether to move forward with a potential home rule charter commission ballot initiative for this November. So we have asked Catherine Sellers to join us, and I will let her introduce herself, but she has worked and her firm and partner have worked with home rule charters in the past and are very familiar with this process. So just wanted to make sure we had some legal expertise helping to guide our understanding, make sure we're not overstating what home rule can provide, and just making sure we have a good understanding of the process and don't miss any steps along the way. So she's agreed to be with us today and help answer some questions and provide any clarifications. Yeah, Catherine, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, good afternoon. As Sarah mentioned, I'm Catherine Sellers, and I have helped several home rule charter commissions draft charters and go through the process of doing that, and hopefully getting it passed by the voters eventually. And so I'm just here to answer any legal questions you might have about the process, or as Sarah mentioned, about what home rule can provide the town of Fraser, what it doesn't provide the town of Fraser, and go over any questions you have. And I'm open to questions from the town, after this. If something comes up and you think, oh, I should have asked that question, just feel free to reach out to us at any time. And either Corey Hoffman, my law partner, or I can answer that question for you.
Great, thank you, Catherine. So home rule at its essence, and for those that are really proponents of home rule, they've quoted Thomas Jefferson in saying that the government closest to the people serves the people best. And so the idea behind home rule is really establishing a home rule charter. And Antoinette, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. I think you're driving, yes. Great. So in a statutory municipality, the municipality, and this is the state that Fraser is currently in, is governed primarily by state statute. So if we are wondering if it is something that we want to do, whether it's legal or not, we consult the state statute. The structures, powers, and procedures are defined by Colorado revised statutes, and local authority is limited to the powers granted by the state. In a home rule municipality, we're governed by, go back just a second. We're governed by a local charter that is approved by the voters. So as we'll discuss, We would have a board of commissioners that would draft a local charter that would then be presented to the board of trustees in a public hearing. And then if ultimately was approved to go forward by the board, then we would be asking our voters once again whether to approve that charter or not. From there forward, any local matters would be determined by that local charter. So it allows communities to self-govern with less state interference through adoption of ordinances that are in alignment with that charter. Next slide. Next slide.
I did go to the next slide
Oh,
as it's
okay. Okay. All right. I'm just going to pull up my copy so I can jump ahead here
Are
while
you
we're
sharing
waiting.
this internet? Are you sharing?
Yeah, it's online.
Okay. Well. Just
So the pros of home rule are generally considered to be just that the greater local control, the ability to create a custom municipal charter. That said, the guidance around creating that charter tends to be to try to keep it as general and flexible as possible so that you're not tied into too narrow of a charter, especially as things change over time. I remember Michael Penny giving the example of not including in the charter that you are going to post your town agenda online, because who knows if 30 years from now, posting an agenda online will still be a thing. So trying to keep that flexibility. A well-written charter can provide increased flexibility in areas of taxation and fees. So one of the areas that we've talked about would be the potential to collect our own lodging tax, and particularly as we look at more hotels coming online, thinking about STRs, having those potential revenue sources. All of those things would still need to be approved by the voter. So it's not just a carte blanche to tax away, which can be a common misperception. Land use and zoning. So as we look at things like PDUs, future annexations, as well as municipal organization. You can respond more quickly to local policies. And sometimes state statutes can be ambiguous. So I know as another example, I have spent time working with Kent's team when we have gone to offer economic incentives to developers, looking at and trying to interpret state statutes as to exactly what those statutes mean. So it allows you to respond a little more nimbly and to create our own ordinances that can be better defined in some of those circumstances. Next slide. So some of the potential cons of home rule, potentially a more complex government. It does require the development and maintenance of a local charter. So a lot of it is just the effort and process, the staff time and resources, money that would be spent developing that local charter. So kind of that lift on the front end. And then moving forward, you do have to continue to maintain it in terms of updating the code and things like that. Potentially legal disputes with the state over whether an issue is local versus statewide. So we'll talk a little bit about matters of local concern and what municipalities actually do have the power to do at a local level versus responding to and being in compliance with statewide statutes. And potentially greater administrative and legal responsibilities. Again, maybe some more gray area for challenges or litigation regarding municipal code, land use policy, et cetera, for items that are not tied to state statute. Before I go on though, Catherine, I know Corey didn't really agree with that. He thought it actually led for less room. So I would love any thoughts you have on any of these pros or cons and how you've actually seen them play out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree that some of these cons are there. I guess I would comment on two things. Is the one, when we go into a charter commission and they're drafting a charter, we always remind them, you have to think that this charter is forever. Because any amendment to the charter has to be approved by the voters, and the voters may constantly tell you no. And so that kind of goes back to that, like making the charter very, very lean is our recommendation. Don't, kitchen sink everything in there because you have to live with it. And I have a client who has a charter from 1945 and parts of it just haven't aged well. And so they have to go over that hurdle of figuring out, drafting new language, trying to explain it to the voters, getting the voters to, approve it. And that can be, a big hurdle. So that's why the drafting is so important, but you can't, you don't have a crystal ball. You can't predict everything. I on the legal disputes, I think yes, possibly, but you exercising your home rule power is going to be discretionary, and whether to get into litigation and fight against the state or against someone else is likely to be a discretionary situation. I mean, the most home rules, and this is not always the case, there's current litigation pending, don't go out and like sue the state over something. That sometimes they do on occasion. It's typically someone suing you. And I think that's where the legal dispute is not under your control. And so, but you don't have to exercise the power either. There's no mandate. Just because you're home rule doesn't mean you have to exercise your home rule powers. You can still follow along closely aligned with what a statutory community does, because maybe that works for you. And so I think there's I agree with these cons in general. I think it's really hard to know how they play out in the future. I think that's what's the challenge.
I have a question. This is Lewis. So can you go back to statutory? Can you, in the future, if you decide to cancel and just it's not working out, or it's
The,
too burdensome, the administrative piece of it is too much, can you go back to be a statutory town?
yes, there is a process to repeal a home rule charter. Again, it has to be approved by the voters.
And again, speaking to, some of the time and resources that go into it, a lot of it is that initial drafting of the charter, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. You have a charter commission that's meeting. So that time leading up to the election. I did speak with Monument, who a couple years back became home rule, and they have spent, a good amount of time and money kind of updating their code to align with the charter. And then also switching over their self-collecting their sales tax now. And so getting the software up and running, hiring an additional staff person to do that. So I think resources is something to consider. That said, my understanding is that the sales tax collection is a big piece of it, but that we can continue to do that through the state, or we could work with a third party to do that as well.
This is
So
Adam. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead,
If you
Adam.
were done, I thought you were done.
Yep.
Okay. I just was curious, all this work drafting the charter, does that happen before or after the vote? Does this have to all be approved and contingent on the vote of the people? Or, what's the timeline if it's after November vote?
Yeah,
Is
we're
there
going to
a
get to
legal
that in
time
a
frame within which we have to accomplish this stuff? Or that's my first question, I guess.
Yes, that is coming up. So let me go through a couple more slides and then we'll walk through the election
Okay.
process, charter commission process. So these are some different examples of matters of local concern. And Catherine, I would love to have you weigh in on some examples. As I mentioned, lodging tax is a big potential revenue source if approved by the voters. I had mentioned kind of economic incentives. That was another area that we ran into that is home rule. We were more limited in what we could offer in terms of economic development and economic incentive packages. Land use is another one that tends to come up. But Catherine, are there any kind of key areas where you have seen this additional flexibility come into play?
The two that jump out that aren't on your list is actually initiative and referendum. So a home rule municipality can alter those provisions that a statutory municipality is subject to for those provisions. And those provisions have to be in a charter along with recall, which is on this list. And so it is something that's often really discussed by home rule charter commissions as to what works for the community to have those initiative and recall provisions, or sorry, initiative and referendum provisions.
Um,
Okay.
another question. It seems like I recall that the transfer tax issue is no longer available. Like Winter Park has a transfer
Maybe not
tax
probably.
of whatever, 1 or 2%. Are we not allowed to do that?
That is my understanding, the RETA, the real estate transfer tax, that only communities that were previously grandfathered in can have it. So that would not be on the table. I know different communities have explored fee structures in lieu of that. So that's something we could possibly explore. I think some of those were being challenged. I don't know if you know anything more about that, Catherine, or have seen that.
I'm afraid I don't.
It seems the only way for us to get the transfer tax would be Winter Park to annex us.
Right.
And
Or the
that would be
state.
a different route to home rule, but.
Right.
Right.
That's true.
That is true.
I hadn't anticipated.
Yeah. The state was considering repealing that rule, but they haven't done it yet.
For everyone that got grandfathered in?
Right. Well,
Oh,
to
sorry.
allow municipalities to
Oh,
have a transfer tax again.
To
But
adopt
it
one.
but it would have to come from the state level, basically. That's what-
Governor
Yeah.
Polis is totally against it, but they're thinking that a new governor might be.
Yeah, he's got 6 months left.
It could change, but I wouldn't hold my breath for me.
If that did happen, would that be something that went to the vote, or would that be?
I'm sure it's a
Yeah.
tax, so it would have to go to voters.
Yeah, it wouldn't be automatic. So there are limits to matters of local concern and what you can do through the home rule charter versus where you are still restricted by Colorado state statutes and the federal constitution. So those do continue to trump local control. Federal and state laws that address matters that are of a statewide or national concern still apply. And then some examples of those constitutional limitations are Tabor. The Gallagher Amendment was another one, but that was actually recalled by voters a few years back. The overwhelming majority of municipalities in Colorado are home rule. Some of the more recent ones that have become home rule are Superior, Erie, and Monument, if I am recalling correctly. But it's a pretty extensive list. And I know that's one of the kind of arguments that's been put forward in other communities that have been exploring this and have put ballot measures to the voters. So to get to Adam's question, steps to adopt home rule. It can be done by petition of registered electors, or the board would initiate home rule by adoption of an ordinance. Within 30 days of that adoption of that ordinance, you have to call an election to determine whether to form a charter commission and to elect its members. Our understanding that based on the population of Fraser, our charter commission would have 9 members. So it's 2 sets of elections. The first election is whether or not to form a charter commission for home rule. And then you actually have the members who are running to be on that commission. That first election is within 120 days of calling the election. So we would be aiming for November 3rd, 2026, if we wanted to move forward at this time. And then the second election, which would happen later, would be to actually adopt that charter.
With the first election, does it list the charter commission members or is that?
It does, yeah. Yep. Let me go to the next slide. So the 2 questions on the ballot would be, shall there be a charter commission? And then if yes, who shall be elected to serve as the charter commissioners? So as part of the timeline, once that call for an election or goes out, or the publication for the election goes out, and then you have people that can run to be members, and they would need to get a certain number of signatures. Next slide.
What if the answer is no?
That's it.
Okay.
Then we're either done or we can revisit it in the future.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, fair question. If the voters say no, then we're done, at least at this point in time. As I understand it, Granby put forth a home rule charter ballot initiative some years back, and it was not approved by the voters. And I think there have been some communities that have had to go back a couple times.
Superior is one of those. I think it was 2018. They tried it and it failed, and they came back in 23 and were more successful.
Why do you think that failed for them? Do you have any insight to that?
I think the biggest reason that charter questions fail is a lack of understanding by the public. And that's not their fault. It's just, I think it's really hard for communities to articulate what home rule can be. And I think sometimes you have people in the community that see it as a power grab by, the governing body or the town, and they get a little freaked out and they start to spread, rumors about what home rule is and that kind of thing. So I think it's really about communicating with your community. That's where things seem to go awry.
Okay.
And one of the items on our agenda for later this evening is a proposal from Magellan Strategies. They work with a lot of communities to do kind of public polling leading up to ballot measures. And different communities seem to be really happy with their work and feel it to be a really valuable part of the process. One of the things that they really kind of sell their polling on is not just doing an initial pulse of where the community is at, but they use it as an opportunity to start educating the community on what home rule is. So they would ask them if they would vote in favor or against it. And then after they ask them that question, they kind of go through an educational piece to explain what home rule is, and to kind of test out some different messages to see what resonates or doesn't resonate with voters and potentially changing their vote for or against home rule, to provide some messaging. And then so that would be kind of an initial piece that we could potentially look at doing as part of this process to help with that education and just to get a better understanding of where the community is at. And potentially, if we were to move forward with Magellan, they were to do the survey work, it comes back that the community is really not in support of this. At that time, we could decide not to move forward as well. But there's a couple different points in time where we can either move forward or not move forward. But then would look to work most likely with Slate Communications that we already work closely with to kind of, again, continue to get that information out and explain what a home rule charter is and provide that information so people can at least be making an informed decision.
So Catherine, this is Peggy. So we are tasked to find 9 members that aren't on the board, aren't on the planning commission, probably, but have some vague interest in the community that probably haven't served on anything, and to set up this commission, and who would be the leader of the band of this commission? Because I would think they'd need an attorney, direction, something to basically start with.
Yeah, so they elect a chair and a vice chair, just like, any type of committee you probably have in the town, your planning commission. So they operate a lot like that. They do, I think, I've never known a charter commission to be without some type of legal guidance. It doesn't have to be hands-on, but at least someone they can turn to. And then they need staff assistance with agendas and setting up meetings and, Zoom links and all of that. They typically don't handle any of that themselves. So they run like a planning commission, except they're independently elected. I do want to say, trustees no one is exempt from sitting on the charter commission. You just have to be a registered elector. So if you sit on the town planning commission or you sit on the board of trustees, you can file a nomination petition and try to run for the charter commission. There's no prohibition. I've seen boards steer clear of being on the charter commission, and I've seen elected officials from the governing body sit on the charter commission too. So it's a real mix. It just depends on what your interest is.
Does the charter commission dissolve when the charter is adopted?
Yes.
Do you have any advice for us as far as the board members being on that commission or not? Is there something that you recommend or no?
Yeah, well, if Catherine doesn't see a legal impediment to it, I would encourage you to do so. I mean, you guys are the most in tune.
I think
I-
the only thing that's been like Michael Penny provided just some input on that, I think at our last retreat. And just kind of talked about, the charter is designed to have 9 people elected who are essentially the community drafting this thing. And for example, if the charter is just full of trustees and planning commission members, it does look like government is trying to plow this road for home rule, versus having, I think, some maybe people that are not involved in the planning commission or board trustees. Just perception wise, I think it'd be good to have a little bit of both, but not overwhelmingly people that are already on planning commission or trustees. It's just, I think, a recommendation that Michael Penny provided earlier.
Makes sense.
I-
Yeah,
I
good
would-
mix.
If I could add to that, the last Home Rule Charter Commission I helped was actually Superior. And it didn't have any the governing body elected officials on it, but it had previous elected officials on it. And it was extremely helpful because those individuals understand how the town works. And they're experienced in just the processes of the town, what worked when they were on the board, what didn't work, and they were able to talk through a lot of that. And they did have some charter commission members who were on, committees like the park committee or the, a rec board or something like that, that also kind of were tangential to the town and so had experiences. And the other thing that Superior did, which I thought worked really, really well, was whenever, like when they did the budget section of the charter, they had the finance director there talking about the budget so that everybody understood what the budget process looks like and what they could change, what they didn't want to change. And so just having staff come in with the expertise to say, this is what my job is incredibly helpful to charter commissions.
Those are public meetings, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So what if we miraculously get like 15 people that want to do it? What is the format of the election? Is it just all 15 people would have a checkbox next to their name and whoever gets the top 9 votes moves on?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not like a slate that we're choosing or anything like that. Okay.
And I do
Does-
remember Michael Penny also recommending that the board be proactive in kind of seeking out members of the community that they feel would have a good understanding and serve well on the commission, and really encouraging people to apply or to put themselves, out there on the ballot. Antoinette, do you want to talk through that process?
Real quick, just on the number of electeds, does a number need to be set before that ballot initiative, or can we see what type of pool or what the votes look like, and the board can make a decision if they want 7, 9, or 11 or whatever?
No, it's set by statute. So you don't have any discretion as to the number that's on the
Oh,
charter
9.
commission. It's based upon your population. I'll say up front, the board, once it starts and, puts the ball out there to say, community, do you want a charter? And here are the candidates for the charter commission. Your role is extremely limited until the end, all the way through the second election. You have basically no discretion and no power. So I always like to tell the governing bodies to be prepared for that.
There's
So
a bit
it's
of a
not-
leap of faith that goes into this.
Yep.
So would we have Magellan, who I guess is going to do this phone bank thing to try to get everybody's pulse? And then once we make this decision and we've got our 9 people, then what you're saying is there's no campaigning, or is there an opportunity to campaign, and who's doing the campaigning so that people understand that the town is behind this idea and the benefits?
Yeah, so the Fair Campaign Practices Act, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, applies to this whole process as well. It applies to the charter commission members once they're elected. It applies to the board throughout the whole process. So once you pass that ordinance at the beginning, I'll leave it up to your town attorney. You should probably talk to them about when they think, but that would be my opinion of when that Fair Campaign Practices Act is triggered, and the board cannot spend public funds to promote the question, except for the limited exceptions under the Fair Campaign Practices Act. And so that's why I think Michael Penny was referring to, the board individually going out there and talking it up and talking to people and promoting it. But the town can't do that. And then if the charter gets referred to the voters, the second election, the charter commission members need to go out there and do the same thing, and the town can't spend its money to do that.
So
But-
Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, we can put information out there, neutral information, and provide pros and cons lists as long as we do both the pros and the cons.
Correct. That's another exception to the Fair Campaign Practices
And
Act.
we could spend those public dollars on that informational campaign.
Correct. But the part of the reason about, whether it's Magellan or, talking to the public prior to even making that initial decision to
Right.
pass that ordinance is so important, I think, because you have a little bit more freedom to talk about it at that point.
So Magellan could not run a campaign on behalf of the town because we would be paying Magellan to do that. Is that
Correct.
what you're saying, basically?
Yeah, after the certain point, yep.
Need a super PAC.
You could start an issue committee could be created, but that's outside the town.
Can we circle back? You said something just a moment ago that the town would have, or this board would have limitations in between the election of a commission and the acceptance of a charter. Can you get into more detail? I mean, I can't. I'm trying to figure out what we're restricted from. I would think land use process, all that stuff would still move forward, but maybe ordinances or I'll let you get into more detail. I have a big question mark.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't clear. Your powers are extremely restricted as to the charter itself. So unless you're a sitting charter commission member or you want to attend the meetings as a member of the public, the Board of Trustees has no power to amend or reject that charter when it's referred to you. You are required to then refer it to the voters. So it may have provisions, it may come to you with provisions, you're like, gee, I sure wish that wasn't in here. But that's too bad. The board has no power to change the charter when it's referred to them. And so that's
Outside
what
of
I meant,
providing-
is that you just don't have control. Yeah.
That's much more acute.
Yeah. No, you're still
was
doing
like,
your
what-
daily
what are we
business. I didn't mean to imply that
Looking
the town
forward
shuts
to
down.
And for how long?
You get a
Business.
vacation.
Okay, thank you.
So Catherine, just to clarify, I thought that once the commission finished its charter, that or at some point there had to be a public hearing to present the draft, and that the board could not maybe request specific amendments, but they could not refer it to the voters. They could send it back to the commission to revise if they were not in favor.
No. They
Okay.
have- Yeah, and the
have to
public
hold a
hearing's
special
actually at the Charter Commission. So the Charter Commission has to hold one public hearing before it finalizes the charter. I think that's actually on the slide in front of us. And then it finalizes it, it submits it to the town board, and the town board has to refer it to the voters. They have no power to reject it. But they can certainly attend as individuals to the public hearing or any commission meeting and say, I don't like that section's great, whatever.
So they have to present it to the board, but that's just kind of I don't know if formality is the right word. They present it and then it moves forward regardless.
Yeah. And a lot of charter commissions will prepare a presentation to explain like why they chose things and to answer questions from the board. I mean, that's fine. The board can certainly ask questions, but it's basically a ministerial act where they just pass it on and refer it to the voters.
Louis, a question about costs. Since we talked a little bit about that. How much does it cost the town? It's $7,500 to initiate this, whatever it is, survey. So how much is
The
it
public
cost
polling
the
people,
town to
yeah.
go through the whole process assuming successful, actually, even if it's not successful? I mean, is it just staff time? Is it, we have to hire another employee? I mean, what exactly is involved?
So it's really just pushing forward a ballot initiative. And, staff would do the work for bringing the ordinance to the town board. And if that's approved, then we're moving forward with that election, that ballot, submitting the ballot language. So it's just staff. It's staff work, which can be substantial for these things, especially once that charter is approved. But we will talk about, there is Magellan who's really focused on educational and informational campaigns, and then we'll also talk about there's a second part to this that if the board doesn't want to continue to move forward with this, there's a marketing part that we could pay someone. There are marketing firms that we've talked to about this already that could submit for so for phase one, Magellan is information education. What is home rule? And then the marketing campaign is like, why does Fraser want to look at going home rule? What could the benefits be specifically for Fraser for going home rule? So that marketing pace is going to be much more expensive, $30,000 to $45,000 kind of thing. And that's if the board wants to move forward with that marketing piece. I mean, that's how these typically are set up from success. Sarah, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so we did the proposal we got from Slate, we could scale up or down. It kind of had a starting point of 23,000. And Sarah Wick already works quite closely with them, so she could potentially take some of those pieces. So it really would just we'd revisit that if once we got to that point, knew we were moving forward with the ballot measure.
I thought you said that, excuse me, the town is not allowed to spend money to promote it. How is that different than marketing?
So we can, and again, correct me if I misstate this, Catherine, or if I misunderstand this. We could spend money before the formal ordinance, but at any time we can do an educational campaign. So we just have to be really careful about how we present it. But to Catherine's earlier comment that the first time it didn't pass in Superior, she believes that's largely because people don't understand what home rule is. So if you've got this random ballot question, you're just as likely to vote no for it as yes if you don't know what this even means. Or if you just think all government is bad, sometimes people don't want to vote for it. So we can do that informational campaign to make sure that people really understand. And one of the things that if we work with Magellan that they try to kind of pull out is what messaging seems to resonate with local voters, right? If local voters want more revenue sources for the town of Fraser, then we could really plug as, a factual piece of information that if this passes, the town of Fraser is able to put a ballot measure to the voters for lodging tax and increase more revenues. If it really resonates with the people who take the survey, who are, meant to represent the population of Fraser, that most municipalities are already home rule and that it provides more local control, then that's kind of the messaging we can run with. Again, presenting this as kind of factual information.
So the survey that Magellan would do, is that before we even initiate the ordinance? When is that?
Yes, that would be a first step. And if you want, we can keep going through the slides that kind of goes through the rest of the timeline. And then David from Magellan is actually going to join us during our board meeting to specifically kind of get more into the weeds of who Magellan is and what they do. So the board can decide if we want to move forward with that piece or not. Antoinette, did you want to speak to this or do you want me to keep going?
If you want to keep going, I think you're doing fine.
Okay, jump in if I miss anything or you want to clarify anything. So assuming this goes to the voters in November, apologize, I'm looking at the wrong. So once the ordinance happens, there is a call for the election and then the commissioners have 30 days to collect signatures on a petition. So they need at least 25 registered electors to sign their petition. If they get that, their name goes on the ballot. Come November 3rd, the ballot measure goes out, one, should we form the commission? If the vote is no, that's the end of it. If the vote is yes, they will then be speaking, they will then vote on the different members of the commission. After that, the commission then must meet within, thank you, within 20 days of the certification of the election. So that first meeting is pretty quick. And then they will meet several times to draft the charter. They have up to 180 days. So again, that's kind of a decision that can be made. They may or may not take that 180 days. Those meetings are open to the public, but then they present that to the town board.
If
Next
I,
slide.
sorry, if
Yeah.
I can really quick. So I think you got, are you still on April elections? Is the town still in April election? You're
We
November.
are not.
No.
Yeah, we're just November.
Okay. Yeah. So that first meeting, certification in a November election, you probably is like late-ish November 23rd-ish. And so it's usually mid-December. And I'll just tell you, because everybody runs on the same cycle. So the first meeting is mid-December-ish, and then everybody wants the holidays off. So it doesn't really kick into gear until January. And by that point, your 180 days is running. And so it's usually mid-May or yeah, mid-May that the charter is presented to the town board. And then there's a giant gap if you run your second election in November between when you refer it and when the election actually occurs.
So will
So
we
the
have
town would,
off-cycle election or not? And how much does that cost? I mean,
could you,
we-
well, so
I mean,
Louis,
well,
we would
yeah.
have the option. We would have the option, the town would have the option of doing a special election or of waiting till next November. The timeline does work that we can present the charter to the voters at the November 2027 election if we don't want to hold a special election before then.
Might be the way to
That
do it.
section election has to happen between 60 and 185 days after publication of the notice of election, which happens after that charter commission is presented within 180 days.
May's
first
probably not the best time of year to have an election up here, so.
Well, you can have a special election whenever you want to, but it's gonna cost money. I mean,
Yeah.
those elections cost what, 15,000 about internet?
About 10.
10? So,
We could push it off to June or July,
Yeah, you can-
when the resident
stagger it.
population's back.
right,
Okay.
right.
So if we go to the next slide, it kind of gives you an overview of the whole kind of timeline, at least starting out here. So in the spring, again, if we wanted to move forward with Magellan, they would get to work here in April. And again, we'll kind of get more into the weeds of that later in the board meeting. They would present the results of their survey to the board, likely in May, potentially June, and then the board at that time could decide if they wanted to continue moving forward with this based on the presentation from Magellan and any other factors. So that home rule ordinance would happen over the summer. Then within 30 days of that ordinance, you have a resolution to call the first election. And then there's the publication of the election, which would have to happen by late August, because that has to be 60 days prior to the election. Then in the fall, after that publication of election, that's when the potential charter commissioners have 30 days to collect signatures and get their name on the ballot. After the election, if the voters vote to move forward, you have a charter commission meet within 20 days after the certification of the election results. They'll work on that through the winter into the spring. So ultimately they have 180 days to draft the proposed charter. Once the board receives the proposed, must publish a notice of election within 30 days. And then that election can take place not less than 60 or no 5 days after the publication of the notice of election. So again, we could do a special election ahead of time, wait till election to have the voters decide whether or not they accept the charter.
And make one small notice. I think the petitions actually have 21 days to get their signatures if it follows the regular election, like the election of our town board.
So it's you said the charter commissioners are advocates for the adoption of the charter. Since you don't know who is going to get 25 signatures, you could get somebody that really doesn't want it to happen. And they could be on the commission and kind of subvert the whole thing if they chose to not want it to go forward. How do you prevent that kind of thing?
Well, you can't really. I mean, if they get elected on there, you know, that hasn't happened. I actually talked to Corey because it's never happened to me. But he said it happened to him once a long time ago that there was a secret kind of sinker on the Charter Commission. And they didn't say anything until the very, very end. And then they tried to get a whole bunch of crazy clauses in the Charter Commission, and they weren't successful. So it's my take is it doesn't happen very often because people who are interested in this are interested in the town going home rule, and it's a very intensive process. The meetings are at least twice a month, and for 3 to 4 hours each time. And it's a lot of drafting and nuance, and if you just want to sink it, it's a pretty big commitment to sink a charter and sit on a charter commission. So I think the problem mostly takes care of itself, but you can't really stop anybody from running. So they're entitled to do so.
So I assume they get reimbursed for serving on the commission?
No, they serve without compensation. But you pay you set a budget for them and pay their expenses, and
We can bring donuts and coffee.
That's quite expensive.
you can buy them
Yeah, I
dinner.
remember Castle Pine saying that, yeah, they provided them dinner because they were meeting in the evenings.
Yep.
Probably a good gesture.
And it actually is 30 days, I think, on the nomination petition. It's a different time frame for some reason in that statute.
Yeah, we don't require 25 signatures for the run for office.
Well,
right?
town board only requires 10.
10, right? Yeah.
The much higher bar, much bigger pool. So I have a question. It's not on timelines, but I was wondering how going to a home rule would affect the board or maybe even the staff, our roles and responsibilities. I'm thinking like, I think in Winter Park, they nominate their mayor. Just things like that. Are there direct implications, or are those things that are designed in the charter itself?
So the structure of the governing body and even the structure of the administrative staff can be dictated in a charter. So your size could change, how the mayor's elected could change, whether to have a town administrator slash manager put in the charter. All of that is part of what is under the municipal home rule constitutional amendment. So it's on the table for change.
And we have no opportunity to influence that once it's in process, right?
Not as a board, but as members, individual members, you can certainly go to a meeting and express your opinion.
You got it. Good answer. Thank you.
But essentially, once you
And-
pass that ordinance, that's really what it's.
Yeah, that was good clarification.
Require you to wear a top hat.
Catherine, can you speak briefly to what happens if the charter
I
goes
own
to the
one.
voters in that second election and it is not approved?
So if the charter is not approved, there's a process in statute in which the charter commission, it's a kind of an abbreviated process, and I can never remember the time frame. I want to say it's 90 days, that the charter commission has to go back and revisit the charter, potentially make amendments, and it's referred again to the voters. And if it fails that second time, then you're really done then. So,
Okay.
but they do have to, I believe it's mandatory, they are required to go back and give it a second.
Amend charter.
Yep.
And then if it weren't to pass the second time, you'd have to start at the beginning again if you wanted to carry it forward.
And there may be like a cooling off period too, like you couldn't do it immediately again.
Yeah,
I
that's
just can't remember off the top of my head. I've never had a charter fail, so.
So is
Okay.
there sort of a boilerplate for charters? I mean, would they be starting from scratch, or is there something basically that they can start with and then kind of decide yes or no on certain key points?
Yeah, so the process that's typically used, and this isn't in statute or anything like that, the Charter Commission's not bound to it, is often maybe staff will find some charters that they think align to what the town may want, that are maybe similar communities, maybe in size or structure to the town, and those will be given typically to the candidates to say, hey, start studying and review these, and then often they will pick a base charter that they like, to start from and work from, and maybe they have other charters that they will refer to. So like in Superior, I think they looked to Erie. Erie had just gone home rule, so they used Erie's. They also looked at Boulders, they looked at Louisville, so they looked at, surrounding communities that maybe had similar values as they did, and they had provisions that they liked. And so that's often what happens. You don't want to draft from scratch with 9 people. You wouldn't be able to get it done in 180 days.
So I
Okay.
know Castle Pines process, as Michael Penny described it, he did a lot of kind of initial drafting, but he would provide to the Charter Commission. The Colorado Municipal League has some guidelines for charters and kind of drafts. So he provided that, and then he would provide some of those neighboring community charters. And they went through kind of section by section. So for each section, they could look at a couple different charters, and then work from that draft to make any modifications they wanted to.
Yeah, we encourage the use of more recent charters. So Monument actually used Castle Pines. And so it's just that it's kind of a moving forward kind of situation, but we would encourage recent charters because some of the older ones have provisions that don't align with like the law, like open meetings or open records or even Tabor. They don't align with that anymore, and so it causes a lot of problems.
Mhm. Okay.
So I think really what we're looking for from the board is direction on if this is something that we want to move forward with at this time or not. And again, this doesn't fully commit us to going to the ballot in November. And then again, during our board meeting, we do have a proposal from Magellan if we did want to work with them for that kind of first step of doing some polling, seeing where the community is at, helping to begin educating the community on what home rule is. And then we would get the information from those surveys. Magellan would do a presentation to the board. And once again, we'd kind of be at a decision point if the board wanted at that point to move forward or jump ship, based in part on the results of that work with Magellan.
Yeah, I think it's something we want to move forward with.
Agreed.
Isn't that an agenda item for the meeting? We can't decide that here at a
Right, but just
workshop.
in general, we can just kind of say, yeah. Mhm.
We're not
Right.
gonna.
Yeah, it's not a vote.
We're not gonna.
Right,
Pretty much.
right,
Taking the temperature of the
exactly.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
sorry, I could have phrased that differently.
asked Google some questions about home rule municipalities, and it said more than 91% of Colorado residents live in a home rule community. That doesn't mean that 91% of municipalities are home rule, but it does mean that the majority of the state is governed by home rule, which is cool. And cities like Denver, Boulder, Colorado Springs, Fort Collins are all included in that. So, I think there's a lot of history that shows that it's a good idea to go home rule, and I think it's something we should pursue.
Brian, I had that stat and now I can't find it, so I don't want to give an exact number, but it is over 80% of Colorado municipalities that are home rule in terms of the percentage of municipalities themselves.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, guys. Well, thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Oh, yeah.
evening.
Sure.
you,
Does the
Catherine.
public want to make any comments? Okay. Sounds good. All right. We'll we'll take a break and jump back in at 6 o'clock.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Catherine.